and welcome to another edition of the Jiu Jitsu Oracle with me, Ross, and my co-host as always, Calum. Today we're going to talk about the Brazilian Nationals, one of the IBJJF majors that happened last weekend, where the stars of the show were Mica Galvao and Kennedy Maciel. So if you want to know why Mica and Kennedy did so well, keep listening. Before you do that, please try and like and subscribe and follow and leave a comment or tell a friend about the Jiu Jitsu Oracle and try and spread the word about what we're doing, which is previewing and reviewing all the big events in Jiu Jitsu this year. That said, the aforementioned Brasileiros have just happened. Calum, Mica Galvao, 3 wins out of 3, all by submission, all under 3 minutes. Why do you think Mica was on such good form?
I don't think it's out of the ordinary for Mica to be on good form, especially against the kind of level of competition at the Brazilian Nationals. Probably not quite as up to par as we usually see Mica against, even though Mica doesn't really have any issue against most people anyway. But yeah, he looked really good in all of his matches. Again, all the stuff that we've talked about with Mica before, just like being incredibly fast and being able to kind of react to whatever sequence he's in so much faster than his opponent. I think the one that stuck out to me was, I think he possibly went for a long step and then he ended up in an armbar situation and he pulled his own arm into a hitchhiker, rolled through, ended up in like a dogfight situation, spanned 2 times, and then ended up on the guy's back. So I can't imagine what it was like for the guy on the receiving end of that to be attacking an armbar 1 second and then the next second just be doing 2 mad rolls and then having Mica on your back. But yeah, just these kind of things that we see from Mica all the time. Sometimes getting put in danger, sometimes getting put in kind of like crazy scrambles, fast-paced situations, but always coming out on the other end in a pretty good attacking situation.
Okay. At the weekend, while the Brazilian Nationals were happening, Calum and I were attending a seminar with ADCC European Trials Under 88 champion Taylor Pierman, who's going to the finals in Las Vegas in August. First off, how did you find training with Taylor?
Yeah, it was good. I was looking forward to feeling that sort of pressure. Watched a lot of his matches before. I think people are more familiar with his leg lock game from the last trials, but the one before that and many other matches previously, we've seen good displays of his guard passing, and that's probably what I've heard the best things about. So I did eat 1 leg lock, but for the most part I was just getting smashed on bottom. But it's always really good when you get to experience that sort of level, because we've got good guys at our gym, but obviously don't quite have people at that level yet. So it's always good when you get to experience that every now and again and just kind of show yourself how far you've kind of got to come to get to that level.
Now, the reason I mentioned Taylor was because you had a conversation with him about Mica Galvao. So do you want to explain what you were chatting about?
Yeah, so I was taking Taylor to the airport, so we were just hanging out around after the seminar at a bar a couple streets down, and he was watching some of the highlights that were posted on Instagram of the Brazilian Nationals as they were going on that day. And I think it was that clip of Mica that I just mentioned, where he was kind of in the armbar and then got out, and then it was a bit of a crazy scramble and he was on the guy's back. And he had an interesting perspective on it that, like, he almost looks human for a second, like in so many situations, like, oh, this guy's going to get Mica, he's going to score on him, he's going to submit him or whatever. He looks like a normal guy, and then like 2 seconds later, that's it, like Mica's won the match, or like he's ended up in a good situation, and it's like, oh, maybe he wasn't so human after all, you know. So I thought that was an interesting perspective, kind of similar but also different to what we've spoke about before, that he does kind of end up in these like scramble situations and he just reacts so much faster than everyone else. Similar sort of idea, but I thought that different perspective on it was quite interesting.
Reminds me of Leandro Lowe. There were times in his matches where you thought, oh, he's just
make himself look
yeah, he just looks really tired. Leandro's done, and then all of a sudden, like, gets in a altercation and comes out on top and gets the match winning score. So with Mica as well, I've now got an idea that'll float that you have to beat him twice if you are to beat him. And the two parts of Mica you have to beat is, first you have to beat the aura of Mica, and then second you have to try and beat the jiu-jitsu player Mica. And I think he's now at that stage in jiu-jitsu where when you step on the mat with him, I see guys, I'll use the word intimidated. Maybe there's a better word I could use, but it's just knowing that what you're going to come up against. I think he's already winning matches before he even taps hands with someone to start the match. I think the aura of Mica now is so strong. He's been on such a great winning run. He's had so many submissions along the way. As we flagged up on the previous episode of the Jiu Jitsu Oracle, he's in a small group of elite competitors that have a submission rate higher than 80%. So of all their wins, more than 80% are coming by submissions. Very few amount of victories coming by points or decision. And Mica scoring 3 submission victories at the Brasileiros is keeping up his fantastic rate. So I just see it. Guys walk on the mat, they start to engage, a position starts to happen, and they're like, yeah, they're in a deficit right away. And on the one hand, it's because Mica's jiu-jitsu is so fantastic, but on the other hand, it's because he just carries that aura about him. What do you think about?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting conversation with the aura, and I think it relates back a lot to his style. Like the guy, when you say aura, like for me back in the day, like watching UFC when I was younger, it was like the guy that had the most aura was Anderson Silva. And it was almost that same thing. It was like they have kind of similar styles, even though it's different sports, just in the fact that like you can maybe feel like you're doing all right in an exchange, and then the next second with Anderson Silva, you're like knocked unconscious, or next second with Mica, he's on your back. And it's like in jiu-jitsu, maybe if you had someone that's had more accomplishments than Mica, maybe had a longer run, but he wins matches in like a different way. Maybe he's just like strategically really good, and like you don't have this fear of like, okay, if I mess up for 1 second, it's going to be over. And like going back to that comparison with like Silva, it's like GSP, just as dominant at the time, didn't really have that same aura, just again because of the style. It was like you had it was a bit more forgiving maybe against GSP, even though he was just as dominant. It was like if you slip up, you've still got like the whole kind of match to try work and get a victory somehow, whereas with Silva, it's like if you slip up for 1 second, that's the match over. And that's the kind of thing I see with Mica, and I think that contributes to his aura quite a bit. It's like, man, I need to be on it the whole match. And even if you are on it, like again, when you end up in these kind of fast-paced situations, he's probably going to come out on top of you. So it's that kind of like fear and anxiety of those kind of situations against Mica that gives him that aura, as well as just being as good as he is.
And I think his aura is going to be amplified at Brazilian nationals because, as you mentioned, the competitors there, while being really quite at the same level that we're going to see in the semis and the finals of the Worlds. And so for people that can handle the aura of Mica and not be intimidated by it or not have their performance hampered by it, I think you're going to need to see Mica against the likes of the Rutolos, or Tynan Daltbra, or someone who's well versed at playing at that level that is used to that.
Yeah, one other thing about being at the Brazilian Nationals that I find really interesting watching Mica's matches were just how packed the stadium was and how electric the atmosphere seemed to be. Seen a lot of like posts by guys like Gordon, like taking snapshots of Worlds with like the seats being empty and stuff and being like, haha, like the gi is dead. And I think it's like, you get a bit of maybe bias being like in the UK and in America, where I think a lot of the kind of market share is getting taken over by no gi, but like Brazil is like a really big country, and over there like the gi still is very much like the main thing. So I think it was interesting to see an event in Brazil just to show you like the gi is really popular still in Brazil, in other places as well, but I think like the market share is getting taken over a little bit more by no gi, but in Brazil it's still a massive thing, the gi, and we saw that with the Brazilian Nationals and how packed the stadium was.
So the other standout performer I saw was Kennedy Maciel. won his division, maintained his quest for the Super Grand Slam, and also got bronze medal in the Absolute, which is a fantastic achievement for a featherweight. So what did you think of Kennedy's performance, Calum?
Yeah, Kennedy looked really good. Some really fun sequences. Seen him use a funk roll a couple times, one kind of defending a takedown. I think that was against one of the sword rays. He managed to just funk roll out of that and reset the position, avoid being scored on. And he's used a similar thing from someone attacking his back, with like a crab ride sort of situation. He managed to kind of just funk roll, forward roll out of that and reset the position. So yeah, it looked really good from that standpoint. I think his physicality and athleticism, I think looked really good for that division. Looked a lot more explosive, faster paced than the likes of the Saldry brothers. His ability to kind of thrive in those maybe wrestling exchanges with potentially a bit more experience in the no-gi. I think we see that a little bit from the guys that do the no-gi as well, compared to the guys that just do the gi, like the Saldrys. Those kind of wrestling exchanges, they do have a bit of an advantage there. Really good passing on top, really patient as well when he gets into those positions he's good at, like the stacking positions, very much willing to just cook his opponent there. And guard looking really good as well. There's really high percentage sweeps, like that come up sweep from kind of set up guard. Just really good overall.
I've chatted about Kennedy before, and we've said that we were not quite sure why he is on such a good winning run just now as to a couple of years previously. So he's come into great form, but I wasn't really sure as to like changes in his game that have occurred that may have led to this great winning run that he's currently on. And I paid a bit more attention at the Brasileiro to see if I could notice anything, and there was nothing like technically that jumped out, other than, as you said, he's in great physical shape just now, and I just think like he uses his athleticism at the right times, or at the optimal times. So, like you said, there was a couple of moments where his opponent thought they were going to be able to score against him, and all of a sudden he's funk rolling out of the situation and then getting clear of danger. And it's like he's obviously got that athleticism in him, but I think maybe one thing that's happening is he's using it at more optimal times. There was also, like, I think tactically he's really switched on just now. There was definitely one match where he got towards the back of his opponent and they were standing, and there's footage of him like walking his opponent back to the center of the mat to make sure that if any scramble ensues, as long as they're out of bounds, then they just get stood up back in the middle, like he gets to maintain his advantageous position. So I just think like tactically he's really switched on. He knows when to use his athleticism, and he's in good physical shape. And I think like those things are contributing more than any like technical changes necessarily that he's made to his game.
Yeah, I think you're speaking about the strategic side of it there, just kind of like being aware of like where he is on the mat, going out of bounds. Remember we were having like a basketball chat maybe like a month ago and speaking about Nikola Jokic, who's one of the best basketball players in the world, and his athletic attributes not being so much physical, but like it was his kind of spatial awareness and court mapping for basketball. And I think in a jiu-jitsu context that would more translate into like knowing where you are on the mat, knowing roughly what the time is, what the score is, what you need to do in the match. And I think some guys have got that down really well, and Kennedy really seems to have that down at the moment.
Also keeping up his quest for the Grand Slam is Towson in the Roosterweight division. What did you think of his performance?
Yeah, really impressive. Again, his top game looking really good. What I liked seeing from his top game was whether he was like sweeping into it or coming up from double pull into it, he was like getting a good upper body connection straight away. We know that Roosterweights typically have got like really good guards, and it can be really hard to kind of close the distance on them and get past that like longer range guards like Spider Guard, Delahiva, that kind of thing. So when he came up, he managed to like get really good tight upper body grips, and then do the leg work to then get past the knees or whatever. And then once he got the upper body grip, that was it. He was just glued there and then letting the legs do the work. And he just kind of stayed in that range the whole time, getting past, getting his scores, keeping control of the match.
Yeah, for me, best top position player in the roosterweight division by far is Taliesin. And I think the other guys in the division are going to find it hard to beat him because he's ahead in an area of the game where a lot of guys are not so strong. So often in that division, you see sweeps back and forward, and the match can end up like 10-8 to one competitor. Taliesin, when he gets top position, very hard to shift off top position and can consolidate the points that he accrues from there. And I think that just puts him ahead of the other guys there. So I think he is definitely odds on to complete the Grand Slam and win the Worlds. On the Grand Slam notes, because we've now gone through the Euros, the Brasileiros, there are 3 females also in the running to secure the Grand Slam. First, Shelby Murphy, who is in her rookie season at black belt in the rooster way. She trains at Art Jiu Jitsu and is onto the scene and is making waves. Gabi Bisagna continues her fantastic winning record, now over 120 matches in a row, weight and absolute. So she's likely to win a Grand Slam in both categories. And I believe Talita Silva is still on course for the Grand Slam. So just wanted to flag up those athletes because as we go towards the Worlds, I think like that is going to become major talking points. Like that to me is an exciting thing to look at, is like who can secure 4 gold medals or maybe 8 in Gabi's case at all the IBJJF.
Something that just popped into my head there that I'll ask you about is whether you think getting the Grand Slam is almost becoming a little bit easier just because of the fact that there's so many other jiu-jitsu events on that, like, if a Brazilian Nationals is on or like a Pan Americans or Europeans, maybe guys wouldn't do this for Worlds, but some of these other majors, if they're on the same weekend as like a big show that are willing to pay them a lot of money, they might see a lot of guys doing that. And we saw that in the Brazilian Nationals this weekend with All Stars, which we'll talk about in a minute. But do you think maybe some of the majors are potentially becoming a little bit watered down just because we're getting so many kind of jiu-jitsu events on every weekend these days?
Well, I mean, first off, if you're featherweight or middleweight and you have also decided to go after the Grand Slam this year, then good luck, because you're going to run into Mica or Kennedy. So I see your point. I think the wider point is that it's these competitions is like very much dependent on who enters. And for IBJJF, like Euros, Pans, or Brasileiro, like it's very much dependent on who's in the division, like who's decided to rock up. I mean, at the World, you're going to get all the best guys all wanting to win the world title. So that will always be such a draw. I don't know how much of a draw the other majors are, other than like you will get guys going there, maybe they need some points to get to the Worlds or whatever. Maybe they think winning that title is one that's missing. Maybe it's a good time for them to compete or whatever. I don't know how much of a draw, how much of a lure the Grand Slam idea is, other than if Mica or Kennedy, if athletes of their stature think it's an achievement worth going for, like that's only going to add weight to it. Yeah. So maybe off the back of those two achieving it, maybe off the back of Gabi Bisagna winning weight and absolute and getting like so much credit and respect for doing that, it's only going to advance the idea of the Grand Slam being something that you want to go after, right? So it's kind of like the more people like us that are talking about it and making it a thing, like the more it may potentially become a thing. And then maybe it will be like once every 2 years, like if Mica does the Super Grand Slam and adds the ADCC title, maybe like every 2 years you'll see more guys wanting to do a Mica, next time around. 2, 3, 4 of like the elite guys, let's try and do a Mica. Let's go after all of them. So I think just it's like anything in sports. Like how much value do you put in certain accomplishments? You know, obviously, like in tennis or golf, winning all the majors is far more lucrative than jiu-jitsu. So in jiu-jitsu right now, it's probably still like just like the prestige and the history of being able to do it is the lure. For Kennedy trying to follow in his father's footsteps, for Mica trying to like be the first guy in so long to do it, you know. And I think like when you get to that elite level as well, is like I would be looking for things to motivate me, you know. Like Mica at such a young age achieved so much, like, you know, what's motivating him to like stay sharp and be at that top level? You know, probably stuff like winning a Super Grand Slam.
Yeah, well, that's the thing as well that I was thinking about there. Obviously, Cabrinha won his Grand Slam quite old, but I feel like a lot of the majors outside worlds, you do tend to see the younger athletes in their like rookie season or first few seasons doing the majors more. Like, remember Tynan was doing like every major for his first couple seasons at black belt, and now seems like he's kind of just interested in doing worlds. And a lot of guys seem like that. Like guys like Lucas Lepre would skip a lot of the majors and just show up to kind of defend his world title. So yeah, that's a part of it as well, I think.
I think it's like, especially in that first couple of years, I mean, it's a way to make your name. Because, like, you know, if you're just relying on a good world's performance, that's going to be really, really hard. Yeah. You could, it doesn't matter who you are, you could conceivably lose before you get to the finals, you know, depending on how deep a division you're in. Some of these divisions are so deep that, like, you know, we'll see great names going out in the quarterfinals just because it's so difficult. So, yeah, winning at Euros or a Pans or a Brasileiro along the way can make it, a good season. I think if you're just relying on the worlds, that you have to be like elite. So when you're young, try and make your name in the sport, I think there's like great value in going around doing the other majors. But you mentioned there was a BJJ Stars event on the same weekend, and that attracted some well-known competitors. I'm just going to mention a couple of them. First off, Monique, big guy. They are two former world champions. They won their world championships in different years at different weight classes, but they've now had a match against each other. And Miram looked awesome on top with side-to-side passing, and Sam just couldn't get his guard game set up at all. So I know you mentioned just when we were chatting about Miram before, like how like dynamic and athletic he is, and how much of a nightmare it can be against playing someone like that, because you can never like get into your game. It feels like you're just chasing the whole time. So he had a fantastic performance, and then the other guy that stood out was the player that won. There was a Grand Prix, a tournament on in the event, and Felipe Andrew came through 3 matches against Leo Lara, Izaki Bayense, and Anderson Ferreira, and looked amazing doing it. And my turn to ask you a question, but I've asked you this already, so you know it's coming.
Yeah.
How do I just bringing it up now, putting you on the spot? But as it is, I've played my hand already. But Felipe Andrew, I was watching play, and he has an amazing spider lasso game, and often uses that to catch triangle chokes on people. I asked Calum, of the gi players, or the predominantly gi players, like who has the most lethal, the most dangerous guard attack, and how highly would you score Felipe Andrews' spider lasso to triangle attack?
Yeah, so I don't know, it's hard to I don't have the list of everyone's signature moves in front of me, so it's hard to compare that. I'd probably give him like a 9 out of 10 on that move. There's only a few other guys I would really think that have like really, really good moves up there from guard, but yeah, he's hit at some really high level people. He tapped Keenan from there at Europeans one year, and then I struggle to remember exactly who it was. I believe it was Hulk, but I remember there was it might have been a third coast grappling or some sub only event in America that Felipe Andrew jumped into in nogi. I think it was Hulk he was against, and he actually hit it in nogi as well. So he was just playing guard on his back, and he kind of had his hands there ready to intercept Hulk's hands when he went to grab his shins, and then just like grabbed it straight away and shot it, which I think is really cool to see that kind of thing hit in nogi. But yeah, definitely a really great move. Some other ones up there, maybe like Merigali's overhead from the deep lasso, that's up there. Tynan's X-guard sweep, but from like a straight finishing perspective, it might be up there as the best. I can't really think of any other ones, to be honest.
Yeah, I think like finishing move.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, you could say like maybe Mica close guard to like back and then getting the strangle, or close guard to armbar, but then it's like how much of that is like a finishing move that starts with the guard, you know? So like Felipe's is so quick that you can say it's like part of like one movement. Also an amazing full lock game as well. So yeah, to have like those two swords, that two moves in his arsenal that can both be finishers out of nowhere, just worthy of recognition, I would say. Something else on the other end of the scale I wanted to flag up that we saw in the IBJJF Brasileiro was the ref is being far stricter over stalling, to the point where if you look at the super heavyweight bracket, you will see that there is an athlete in first place, Elder Jr., and then there are two athletes who are both listed as coming in position number 2, Pedro Elias and Victor Honorio. And then there's a third place, Renan Barreto, right? And usually in IBJJF, what you get is someone in position 1 who wins the gold medal, someone in position 2 who wins the silver, they've played in the final, and then 2 people who get bronze, and they don't do bronze medal matches in the IBJJF. However, what happened here was, in the final, where it was Pedro Elias against Victor Honorio, both guys got DQ'd for stalling. So then, in an effort that there's not a vacant first place on the podium, they have a bronze medal match, essentially, like the two guys that got beat in the semi-finals, they play each other, but that now becomes the final. And Elder Jr. won, ironically, with a very quick submission. So it wasn't the only division where it happened, where athletes were disqualified for stalling, but there is, I think, an emphasis being put on being far stricter on dishing out the stalling calls, which, as a fan of the sport, I am all for.
I think, that's good from like a general perspective. I would like to see like specific circumstances for penalties being given out. Like we've already got like the double pull situation, you've got 20 seconds to do something and then you get a penalty. I'd like to see that with some other positions as well, like 50-50 lapel, and maybe just some lapel positions in general if you're not doing anything with them within 20-30 seconds. Like seen a lot of double lasso as well. There's nothing really offensively you can do from there. It's more just to kind of slow things down and maybe stall out the match a little bit. So it'd be good to maybe let you make your point.
No, I was having a think.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think it's a discussion that we should have in a future episode, is should moves either A, be outlawed, or B, be penalized. So if you wrap a lapel between someone's legs, like how is that a fighting technique? Like it's just a consequence of like the gi jacket being a little bit be long enough that you can get the fabric there, right? So I don't think it has any like if we were to have a scrap and we're both wearing jackets, like you're not going to unzip my jacket and like weave a bit on your legs. So anyway, I totally agree with you. I think like jiu-jitsu needs to look at positions where stalling can happen, and be much stricter on it. And like 50-50 guard, where you add the lapel to it, it's like, well, that's an absolute nightmare. So either do something with it in 20 seconds, or like disengage the position and reset it, or give a penalty point out or something. But yeah, there are some positions in jiu-jitsu that just are a nightmare from a sporting context. And it's like, it is a sport and it is entertainment. And they're, like you said, people go and watch it, and the Brazilian Nationals was busy, and people buy Flow Grappling subscriptions to look at it. And it's not helpful to have these positions where just like the game like totally shuts down, nothing happens, and like neither athlete can do anything about it. So that was my point. But thank you for making way so I could jump in there. But I do believe that you were getting to the end of your sentence. So if you can remember what you were saying.
Yeah, no, it was just like along those same lines. Like maybe if they could decide on certain positions that we see over and over again happen in matches where like the pace is significantly slowed down and like there's not really much progression. It's almost this kind of like trench warfare, you know. It's like they maybe do something, someone will get to this like grip, and it's like I think you see more from the guy on bottom, because maybe if you're on top and you got to a good position, more be using your weight and like cooking the guy and tiring him out, and that's fine because you're like working towards something. If you get to like a passing position and you need to cook someone for like a minute, I'm totally fine with that. I don't really like people that get like when you see like stalling calls from like a stack pass. If I get you in a stack pass, like I should be able to cook you there for 2 minutes, because like I work there and I'm like 90% through the pass. It was more like, there might be some examples from top as well, but it's more just coming to my head from bottom, where like guys are getting certain grips, getting certain guards, and they're just not really doing anything from there. They're just kind of like in that trench, not doing anything. There's no action happening. Again, if they get to those positions and they want to do that for like 15 seconds to get their breath back or get it to set something up, or if they're using lapel guard and actively like off balancing, going for stuff, I'm fine with that. But it's just like, see it quite a lot of the gi that it's really slowing down the action of the match. Nothing's really happening, and it's like, it's not even necessarily like the guy on top can really do much. It's like they're so tied up and like confined in this position, unless the guy on bottom like gives something up to go for something, there's not even really much they can do.
So we'll have a discussion in the future, no doubt, about positions where we think there should definitely be stalling, or positions that should be stalling points given by the referee, or whether like you should just be banned, that you can't do that anymore. But I am happy to see that IBJJF's making, it seems to be an effort to be stricter with it, and the fact that they've done it in the Brasileiros, like a high profile event, will have an effect on the Worlds, because no one's going to want to get DQ'd in the Worlds for accruing penalty points, or even thought they would.
Yeah, the IBJJF do seem to make like progress with some things. They just seem to do it incredibly slowly, like with the heel hooks and no-gi, like it happened, but probably like 5 years after it should have happened. So yeah, we do see them kind of going in the right direction with some things. They just tend to do it very, very slowly, probably just because there's so much kind of tradition steeped into that organization.
Yeah, well, keep it up, guys. Let's see some exciting matches. And talking, a little segue of exciting matches, the next Jiu-Jitsu Oracle episode is going to feature a rundown of the upcoming Who's Number One card, headlined by Nicholas Merigali against Wagner Rocha, and that is on May the 10th, a Friday. So I believe, if all goes well, Calum and I will be training at SBG Aberdeen on Tuesday morning, and then we'll be able to record a pod after our training session previewing that event. So tune back in to the next Jiu-Jitsu Oracle to get a rundown of the upcoming Who's Number One event.